Salvete omnes. Today we continue our trip through the Nāvigātiō Sancti Brendanii Abbatis, the voyage of St. Brendan the Abbot, and we have reached the island of the Smiths, Īnsula Fabrōrum. Transactis autem diebus octo, so 8 days having passed, viderunt insulam non longe valderosticum saxosum atque scoriosum. They saw an island not afar, very rustic, or very rural, rocky, and slaggy, sine arboribus et herba, without trees and herbs, plenam officinis Fabrōrum, full of workshops of smiths. So this island kind of looks like Mordor. Venerabilis pater ait fratribus suis, the venerable father said to his brothers, Vere fratres, angustia est mihi de hac insula, quia nolo in illam ire aut etiam sibi aproten quare, sed ventus ilux subthacet nos recto curso. So truly, brothers, I am in a tight spot, or it is narrow to me, about this island. We've seen angustia used a couple times. For example, when the three monks threaten the hunger strike to come along the trip, Brendan sees the narrowness, the tightness, the angustia of the place they're in and lets them join the trip. Because I do not want to go nolo ire into that island, or even to approach to it, but the wind draws us there by a straight course. Circumdabator illa limite. So the island was surrounded by a border, which makes you think that perhaps this is a walled island and it's maybe an artificial island even. Ergo, illis praeteriuntibus parumper quasi iactus lapidis, audierunt sonitis folium sufflantum quasi tonitruum, atque mariorum collisiones contra ferrum et cudes. So therefore, and we've got this word praeteriuntibus, so passing by. Passing by, parumper is briefly, about a stone's throw away. They heard the sound of bellows, like baffles for a blacksmith shop, folium sufflantum, so the inflating or the blowing of bellows like thunder, and the collisions of hammers against iron and anvils. And kudes here is a medieval word that's a variant from the more classical incus, if you're wanting to look that up in a dictionary. His auditis venerabilis pater amavet se Dominico Trofaio in quattro partes dicens, Domini Iesu Christe liberanos de hac insula. So having heard these things, the venerable father armed himself with the trophy of the Lord in 4 parts, which seems to be he's making the sign of the cross in 4 different directions. That's what the Dickinson commentary suggests, and I tend to agree with that interpretation. Saying, Lord Jesus Christ, free us from this island. And this is kind of the first time in this book we've seen Brendan appear scared or lose his cool a little bit. Finito sermoni viri Dei, so the words of the man of God having been finished, ecce unus ex habitatoribus iustum insulae egeriebatur foras quasi ad aliquod opus peragindum. Behold, one of the inhabitants of the same island was going outdoors, like he was going to carry out some work, aliquod opus. Erat ille hispidus valde, that one was very hairy, et igneous and fiery, atque tenebrosus, and dark. So this kind of makes me think of the fire creature that the Balrog encountered in the mines of Moria, where it's like a fire creature, but like darkness comes with it. Except here it's also kind of cyclopean in nature, which we'll see. I mean, we're not told it has one eye, but the creatures on this island do behave a lot like the Cyclops from Homer's epics. Cum vero vidicit famulos Christi transire juxa illum insulam. And when he saw the servants of Christ to have gone past next to that island, he returned reversus est in suum officinam, into his office. Vir Dei iterum se armavit et ait frateribus. The man of God again armed himself and said to the brothers, Filioli tindite in altum plus vera. So, brothers, raise the sails as high as you can, et simul navigate quantocius, and at the same time row as hard as you can, or as soon as you're able, atque fugiamus istam insulam, and let us flee this island. Citius dictu, so as soon as he had said these things, or before he finished his words, is how I glossed it down here below, Praedictus barbarus occurret ad litus illis e regione. The aforesaid barbarian ran to the shore. You could say of that region. This could also be like directly across their path. We saw this word used earlier with the griffin fighting the bird. Portans forcipum in manibus cum massa ignea de scoria, carrying a forceps in his hands with a fiery mass of slag, immensae magnitudinus atque fervoris, of immense magnitude and fervor or heat. So this giant smith sees them, runs back into his office, and using a forceps grabs like a fiery piece of slag. Qui statum super famulos Christe iactavit praedictum massum, who immediately threw the aforesaid mass over the servants of Christ, said, Illis non nocuit, it did not harm them. And nocuit is one of those special verbs that uses the dative here instead of the accusative. Transivit inem illos, for it went over them, quasi spatium unio stadie ultra, about the space of one stadium past them. Nam ubi cecidit in mare, but where it fell in the sea, coepit fervere, it began to boil, quasi ruina montis igni fuisit ibi, like the ruin of a mountain had been there. And I take the ruin of a mountain to be like the eruption of a volcano. Et ascendebat fumus de mare sicut de clibano ignis, and fumes or smoke ascended from the sea, like from a cooking fire. Iron vessels or earthenware. Ad vero vir Dei, and the man of God, having gone over like the space of 1 mile from that place, ab illo loco ubi cecidit massa, omnes qui in illa insula erant occurrerunt ad litus, so everyone who was in the island ran to the shore, portantes singuli singulas massas, so each of them carrying their own mass of slag to throw at the monks. Alii iactabant post formulos Christi massas in mare, alii alter super alteram iactabant suam massam revertentes in illorum officinas incendentes eas. So some threw their masses into the sea past the servants of Christ. Others, one after another, were throwing their masses, returning into their offices, and incendentes, some kindling them. So it seems they're like heating up their forge to make more ammo to throw at the Christians. Et simul apparuit quasi tota arsa illa insula sicut unus globus, and at once it appeared like a whole ball of fire, that whole island. There we have globus, and arsa I glossed as being burned. So that whole island appeared like it was being burned, a ball being burned. Et mare aestuabant sicut cacibus plenus carnibus. And the sea was boiling like a cooking pot full of meats. Aestuans quando bene ministrator ab igne. Like how it simmers or boils when it is well ministered from fire. Et audiebant per totum diem ingintem ululatum ab illa insula. And they were hearing through the whole day a giant howling from that island. Etiam quando non poterunt illam videre. And then when they could not see it, ad ores iorum attingembanc ad huc ululantis habitatium in illa, the howling of the inhabitants in that island was still ad hoc reaching or touching their ears. Atque ad nares ingens fetor, and to their noses a giant stench. So even after they couldn't see the island, they could still hear them and smell them. Tunc sanctus pater suos monachos confortabat dicens. Then the Holy Father comforted his monks, saying, O milites Christi robaramini in fide non ficta, et in armis spiritalibus, quia sumos in confinibus infernorum. So, all soldiers of Christ, strengthen yourselves in faith, not feigned, and in spiritual weapons, because we are in the confines or in the boundaries of hell. Propterea vigilate et agite viriliter. Therefore, keep watch and conduct yourselves manly or with vigor. So a couple notes here. That's the end of the chapter. So one note would be this one, comparing it to Odysseus running away from Polyphemus, who's like throwing these rocks in them. And it seems the same thing is happening here. I think this is clearly a callback to that poem, except it's Smith's. So they managed to combine the idea of the Cyclops being these like underworld forgers of iron and things, and also this idea of like the artificiality of hell, where it's not like a natural thing, but it requires people to like toil away to make things as bad as they are. Other thoughts on this. There's the clear volcanic imagery, which I think is interesting. Now, some, of course, would see this and be like, oh, it's a volcano that erupted, and it's like throwing rocks into the sea, and they are fanciful, and they see that as being blacksmiths throwing masses of slag at them. And I don't think that's a very good way to interpret stories. It's overly reductionistic. I think a better way would be to assume that the writer of this narrative wasn't, a fanciful travelogue writer, but perhaps was saying that, like, the volcano is a good image of the spiritual reality that lies underneath. For example, a volcano is something majestic and stable and grand. But what happens with a volcano? The thing that was supposed to be stable and grand at once falls apart. It's destroyed. It's ruined. The mountain is ruined, as they use the phrase here. Kind of like you had Satan, a great angel who in a single instant was ruined and fell from grace. So I think that's probably how I'd interpret this. And then past this island of Smiths, we get to the very portal of hell in the next chapter.